I like that. I love
It's
that
more
reading.
like Kefka's story.
Yeah.
Is represented here in this boss. His story through the game.
That's so cool.
Or the way he views himself, I guess, right?
Yeah,
the way he views his own
His
hero's
transcendent journey,
or whatever you want to call it. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kason.
And this is our final episode of Final Fantasy VI. Now, here's something you're going to notice. After
a wardrobe change.
After about the first 10 minutes, our clothes will be different. And this is because we recorded this episode last week, but we felt we needed to respond to some things that went up, or some things like in the comments that for episode 9, which is out now, but 10's not. We're a week ahead. So anyway, there was some comments that we wanted to respond to. So there's 2 more areas. And we actually said this at the end of the episode. We're like, oh, yeah, we forgot to talk about the ancient castle. Oh, yeah, we forgot to talk about that.
Oops.
I don't think that there's necessarily a ton to discuss on this. There's just a little bit, but I think it is important enough to actually bring up some.
I think so, too. And some of this just comes from the game being a lot of missable content. There's just a ton of missable content.
Yeah. But before we do that, I just wanted to respond to kind of a certain sentiment I saw come up a couple times.
Yeah.
And I just really, usually I try these days not to read too much into comments or respond to them if they're negative or whatever. I've been doing a lot better at that lately, but this is one that is not necessarily negative. It's just there was a sentiment shared by more than one person, and when that happens, it's like, okay, I feel like I should say something about it. So there was this idea, you guys are rushing through the end of this game because you're just wanting to get on to the next one, or that it's just you want to be done with this or something.
I doubt it.
No. I just want to say no, that's not the case. Anything that we may have missed talking about was not done purposefully because we're just trying to finish one of our favorite games that we've ever covered on this podcast, sooner or later. There's no need if you're feeling like, oh, you guys are rushing past something I think that's important to talk about. There's no, just remember, there's no need to assume that we're doing something in bad faith for a reason like that. We're not oh, this podcast isn't getting the numbers we want. We better hurry up and get to the next game or something like that. That's never going to be a reason why we would want to rush through something. It's usually because there might just have not been something there we took a note on. We might have done the content, but it's I didn't feel nothing came to my mind that I felt was worth saying. Not that the area is not worth talking about, but I didn't have a spark of an idea to discuss something there.
This game was just really hard to try to talk about linearly. My notes for one thing was in a different place for Mike.
Sure.
And we were kept having to scroll up and down and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of times a game like this that is just so there's a lot of freedom to the character, which is awesome. Yes. But then we have to come and talk about a linear story, and all of a sudden it makes it a lot more difficult. Yeah.
So that's if that happens, you can always just say hey, what do you think about this? I haven't heard you guys discuss Ancient Castle yet.
Right.
Or do you have thoughts on that? Will that be covered? Here are some of my thoughts or why I think it's important, or some things that I think would be worth discussing if you were to do this. If you leave a comment like that, we're going to see that and we're oh yeah, let's, cut in something next episode or something like that, like we're doing now. But you have no need to assume that there's some bad faith reason why we're trying to just blow through this and we don't care anymore. Right. The other thing I wanted to say is that is a matter of expectations. So we try to say this at the beginning of every podcast, in the first episode of each new series.
Right.
This is a podcast that is focused on storytelling techniques, on thematic and literary concepts.
Yeah, art analysis.
Yes.
And
not on lore or exhaustively summarizing the events of the story in every specific detail.
Yes.
It's not that we're uncomfortable doing that, or we're totally uninterested in it. It's the fact that like there's a limited amount of time in our lives. And if we're going to be focusing on one thing, we might as well do that like to the extent or with the depth that we want to do it without compromising that to then, I've also got to know every single thing about the lore and world of the story. I've got to know every single thing about how the mechanics techniques of the game work.
Right.
And now I need to know every single difference between every single version of the game that's come out. You know what I mean? Like there's a level of research into being that exhaustive on every aspect of the game that is just not feasible.
We just aren't doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're analyzing the story, the main line story of the game, and that's what we're here for.
Yes.
That's why we're here. That's what we're doing.
So just moving forward, just realize like we're not here to regurgitate the summary of the game or the lore or anything like that. We're looking specifically at the core themes and the philosophy and the symbolism and the literary elements. So if there are things outside the scope of that we don't touch on, it's probably because we're not seeing how they link to that discussion.
Right.
Not because they're not cool. Or because it's not interesting to theory craft about, some people brought up Mog, and like there's more to talk about there because the other Moogles, and you got like the charm or the relic there that might suggest he had a girlfriend, and that but it's like that is great content to talk about. I'm not disparaging anybody for wanting to have that conversation. It's just not linking to what we're talking about as like the main point of what we do on our podcast. As far as Mog's dialogue goes, he didn't seem to be all that affected by it because he didn't say anything about it. He said, I'm the boss of this other guy. Let's go get him too. He didn't like, sit there and talk about the way that Tara or some of the other characters did their past trauma and things that we could actually like take and dissect. So when that happens, that's the reason, but we may miss something that's worth talking about, and we encourage you, as always, bring it up.
Yes.
Just, again, I just feel like some people seem to assume that we were brushing past this because of a bad faith reason. And just no, that's not the case. I don't think Guggo sucks. I just don't use him. I just don't use him. I was admitting I have no experience really using this character, and my reason why, which was that he can't equip espers. It's not because he can't get the magic spells, is because I tend to use the progression system of the game to change the character's stats over time. Right. So like I can't equip espers on him. I can't change his magic stat on level ups. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be just as useful in the battle mechanics. It's just that was my reason in playing the game. I can't equip espers. I don't think I'll worry about this right now.
There's so many characters.
I've already worked on these characters the whole game. Like, I'm just going to keep using them. Yeah. That was my reason, not because I think he's a terrible character or something. So hopefully that clears some things up. Anything you want to say to add to that, or are we good?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So we want to talk about two areas, one being the ancient castle, and the other being Ebot's Rock. Ebot's Rock is kind of a side quest for Strago. You get a little bit more background on him there and his buddy Gung Ho.
Gung Ho, yeah. Love it.
But Ancient Castle is more, it gives you some tidbits about like the world 1,000 years ago, possibly during the first War of the Magi. So what notes did you take for this area?
This area, I don't have much to say. I remember when I first played through it, I didn't know exactly what was going on. I kind of figured it out, like, hey, 1,000 years ago, a thing happened. But I didn't know the significance of it, other than to say that there was previously a woman, a princess, in the SNES it says queen, who fell in love with Odin, the Esper.
Yes.
And through the course of the War of the Magi, becomes turned into stone, but a statue that is capable of crying. And this seemed to touch Tara specifically, where she said, oh, whoa, I'm not the only one. There was another human Esper love connection, right? So that nonsense about, well, how do we know unless we try? It had been tried before, and I don't think it worked. So anyways, that's all I really have there, though. There's not a ton there. I read through the whole scenario today, and there's not a ton of dialogue there.
Okay, so the way that you get to the ancient castle is you go you ride Figaro Castle. It goes between the Figaro area and then the Kolingen Desert area next to it. And like as you're like down underground, kind of like traveling, the NPC that operates the I don't know what you call it, the digging of the castle.
Yeah. Oh, the what's it called? The mathematical field that vibrates the
in Xenogears. Yeah.
What was it called?
Gosh, I can't remember that. The Hilbert, no, Hilbert effect was Xenosaga.
Oh, I can't remember
it
anymore.
either. There was some, like technical term, but I can't remember it either. Anyways, this guy says there's something odd about this stratum. It's as if we bumped into something. So you can get off and like go explore these ancient ruins that are underground from a civilization that existed during the War of the Magi.
Yeah, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. So you kind of come out and you're seeing a flashback, basically, of an Esper attack. This is Odin, the Odin Esper, and you also get Raiden here too. So there's 2 Espers you get from doing this quest. So the NPC says, it's an Esper attack. Let's show him what our Esper, or some of our Esper magic. 1,000 years in the past, a battle was waged here. Holy Odin is here. Your wounds healed. They're all fighting. It's a pretty cool shot though, because like Odin comes out and there's like a bunch of dudes like lined up to face him, and he just quickly like go through and they'll just like all split apart.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Just cuts them all in half.
Cut them in half. That's crazy. That was pretty violent, man.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is some of my favorite footage to use when I talk about Final Fantasy VI and videos and stuff like that. I think I put it into the old retrospective that I did. But
nice.
Don't do it. You can't turn me into Magicite, he says. Atom Edge, I think, is the name of the ability he uses. Let's see. So the party says in response to this, there's an ancient legend. It tells of a battle between Odin and a powerful sorcerer that took place in a great hall of this castle. So you go and explore it a little bit, and you get Odin's Magicite shard. Yep. You can also go into the basement of this area, where the queen was, and you were talking about this, the link maybe between the queen story and maybe Terra a little bit.
Yeah, and this is if Terra's in your party,
right?
Then when we see this whole thing, well, here's the line here that's read: a book with a gem encrusted cover, the Queen's diary. I realize now that I am in love with Odin. This is the queen talking. Sorry, the princess. Depends on which version you're playing, right? This breaks this breaks every rule of our society, but my heart longs for this noble, elegant man, the god Odin, of course. Yep. How could anyone blame me? After the fighting is over, I'm going to bare my soul to him. And then Terra will say, just kind of to herself, love between a human and an Esper, ... Yep. That's really kind of the end of it, though.
Yeah.
Like, we just don't see much more, other than she got turned to stone.
Yes.
Somehow.
Yes.
A stone that can still
Petrified.
shed tears.
Yep.
And then Odin got turned into Magicite.
Yep.
So whatever happened there, it just, that's how it ended.
Yep. And so, the party says even the queen was turned to stone. I guess maybe other people must have also been turned to stone. Or is that even?
I can't
even
remember.
the queen was turned to stone?
There may have been a lot of stones there.
What does it say in the Japanese?
Same thing. The Japanese, oh gosh. So it's the same thing. Even the princess was turned to stone.
So I wonder if maybe other people had been petrified during this battle or something. Anyways, the Odin Magicite gains a level, and then and becomes the Magicite Raiden. So
yeah, that's it.
That's what happens in this area.
That's it.
That's it.
It's just worth knowing that humans were falling for gods.
Yep.
Kind of. Once again, with Xenogears, kind of like, what is it? Mm. The daughters of men and the sons of God the Nephilim and all that stuff.
Yep, the Nephilim.
Anywho, she falls in love with this, and it ends in the destruction of the world.
Yeah, so it's
there's
kind
a dragon,
cool
too.
Scene. Oh, yeah. Oh, the 8 dragons that you go and slay.
Yeah.
Kind of a side quest thing that you can do. I just don't really have that much to say about it. I mean, it's cool. It's a cool scene.
It is cool. It's short.
Just not sure, like, what else really to talk about in regards to the game's core themes or whatnot. So the other one that we wanted to kind of touch on quickly was Ebot's Rock. So there's a side quest. This is a character you could have talked to earlier, is Gung Ho. And he talks about this monster that he and Strago in their younger years had sort of been seeking out and hunting. And he is questioning whether Strago has given up on his sort of quest to seek out and hunt this monster. And he sort of like calls him a coward, I think, earlier for like, he's accusing him of having given up on it or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is something that you can do at Ebot's Rock. So let's see. We have an NPC here who says, if you're looking for the man dressed all in black, he left for the Colosseum. Oh, that was for Shadow.
That's Shadow, yeah.
This script is so jumbled. Okay. This one says, I saw a monster floating in the sky. It looked just like a fish. For the first time in 50 years, Ebot's Rock is above water. Head north of town if you want to see it. So this is what directs you to go there. So let's skip forward a little bit. Realm and Strago, if you go into their house, I think Realm is saying, oh, it's nice to be back. Like, time to relax. And this is terrible. Gung Ho is hurt. Gung Ho, wake up, says Strago. Who did this to you? And Gung Ho says it was Hidon, the beast you and I used to hunt. I almost had it. You took on Hidon? Oh, cough, cough, cough. Please, you must avenge me, he says.
This is hilarious knowing how the scenario ends up, at the end, right? Where it's like Gung Ho was fine. He wasn't actually hurt. What Gung Ho is trying to do is he's trying to get Strago to confront basically his own past, or to confront his own shadow self, or to take on, something on his own that's been holding him back for a very long time. Yep. And Gung Ho is here pretending like if it's vengeance, then Strago will go back and finally get past this thing that he couldn't get past for so long.
Right. So he's pretending. He's just trying to get him to go and fight this monster. I spent my youth chasing that creature, says Strago. To do it again at this age is more than I bargained for. Gung Ho, rest easy, I'll do it for you. So he pretends to die. Unless he's just so hurt that he's like...
I don't know if he died or if he just fell asleep or passed out or but something like that. He's on that level, yeah.
Yeah, he's like pretending to be at least at death's door. Just a minute, I don't think you're going alone, are you? Says Realm. Spent too many years of my life hunting that thing. It is my obsession, not yours. But Grandpa, the obsession of yours could easily slay you. You're my grandfather. I can't just sit idly by. Sorry, Realm. I'm so grateful that you care, but as its name implies, the Hidon is extremely difficult to find. Unless...
Right. Now think about that. It's hidden.
Hidden. Yeah.
The Hidon is hidden.
Yeah.
As the name implies. I love it. That's so good.
Unless I go alone, it will not show itself. Next stop, Ebot's Rock. So they go there. Oh yeah, this is the treasure that you got to feed like a certain number of coral. It's like a very specific number. It's like hungry. It's like a treasure chest. And in order to get past it, you have to keep like going through the cave, gathering coral. Yeah. And if you don't get enough, you got to like start over again. So you feed it like coral, and then the treasure will move out of the way.
That's funny.
Let's see. Munch, munch, munch. That was great. Give me some more. I'm not happy unless I eat, unless I have plenty. I think it's like exactly 23 coral you're supposed to give it or something. I don't know how you find that out on your own. But anyway. Okay, so you give them enough. You want to pass through here, right? That's Hidon. And then and you fight it. I did it. I finally actually beat Hidon. I have to go tell Gung Ho he is vegetable. I guess he didn't assume he was dead if he feels like he has to go tell him. He's just told him to rest.
Okay, he was just resting.
Okay, so Gung Ho, what's all the hullabaloo? Listen to me, I defeated Hidon. You what? You beat Hidon, you're lying. Lying, no, he's not, says Realm. He really defeated him. And, if I didn't know better, I'd say Hidon wasn't my only enemy. And then he's like, by the way, how are your wounds healing, Gung Ho? They're fine.
That's so funny. I love it, dude. That's so good.
They're fine.
He's telling the story, right? So there I was, in a cave that seemed endless. Then before I knew it, Hidon appeared. Oh, yay. So funny. And he's just talking about how he
fought
how he fought it off and all that stuff. And I wanted to show my enemy the true meaning of the word hero. And then, right, he's just kind of going on and on and on. And Gung Ho is just humoring him. Like, it's fun. It's a good time. Then Realm and Gung Ho kind of get to talk kind of on their own a little bit later.
Yeah.
And Realm's saying, what happened to Grandpa? And Gung Ho's like, oh, he finally fell asleep. And then Gung Ho's saying, let's just let him be. This is fine. Now, about my wounds. And Realm is like, wait, first let me thank you. You gave him a reason to go and defeat something that had tormented him for decades. Even if you were faking it, the creature meant business. And Gung Ho's like, whoa, you knew I was acting? How did you know? And Realm's like, you suck at acting. You said only Strago would have been taken in by that performance, which is so good.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, Realm she's so funny. I love it.
Yep.
But yeah, he basically is trying to push Strago. He gave him a little nudge out the door by pretending to die.
Yep.
And that got Strago to confront the big obstacle in his past. Right, that's been so difficult for him. And Realm knew the whole time, but she played along with it right away. So she's really clever.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yep. And that's pretty much it for that. We got a funny comment here from Pax and Cristo. Were they drinking cider?
That's just too much cider,
Too much cider.
Somebody mentioned that in a lot of other countries outside of America, cider is alcoholic.
That's true.
I didn't know that.
It's true. Anyway, that's it for covering these sections we meant to cover or didn't cover last time. Now we will cut to
enjoy the rest.
The finale of the game. This is our final episode of Final Fantasy VI, and we're going to talk about Kefka's Tower and the end of the game.
Yeah.
It is time. So you finally split your party into 3 units.
Yep.
3 units of 4, and they all have to work together. This is probably my favorite final dungeon.
This was pretty cool
of the FF series because of this fact. Because it's about sort of working together in 3 separate groups to open the path forward, and each one has to go down a different way.
There were a few times where we had to be in 2 separate groups or something like that, but three groups for the single dungeon. That was pretty cool. It's almost a reinstantiation of a populist version of the Warring Triad, where it's like the people, and we go fight the statues as the people of Earth.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
It's good stuff. Really kind of fun dungeon, but there's not necessarily a ton to talk about, except for the fact that you do fight the 3 god statues as sub bosses before you reach Kefka at the end. And there's a lot of dialogue there we'll go over, but you took some notes.
I took some notes on the statues. So the first one is named Doom, right? And the word is, I think it's Majin in the Japanese, which can be translated a bunch of different ways. But then Ted Woolsey chose Doom. I think it's a different name. Fiend. I think it's Fiend in the
English.
Advanced, or in some of the other translations, they use the word Fiend instead of Doom. It technically means something along the lines of a god. But they're trying to separate them out. Then you have the Guardian and Demon. This is really good because these 3 parts of the statue do have some resemblance to the final boss when we fight Kefka.
Right, there's 3 stages.
There's kind of, that's they're kind of all mashed together in some unholy union that looks, pretty gross. But you've got Doom, the Guardian and Demon, and then you have the Goddess. Mm-hmm. The word for Goddess is Megami, which is, anyways, really good.
Yeah.
Tetsuya Nomura made the artwork for the Warring Triad, right? He named the goddess Sophia. Megami does mean goddess. The goddess has only 1 wing.
Yep.
What's up with Tetsuya Nomura?
Yep, and 1 wing, yep.
And Tetsuya Takahashi as well.
For 1 wing.
Yeah, the 1 winged motif just comes up all over the place. So you've got this goddess that only has 1 wing. The idea behind the 1 wing is that at least for Tetsuya Takahashi, it was that you can't fly alone. You need a pair to fly.
Yes.
Beautiful. I don't know Tetsuya Nomura's reasoning behind the 1
cool.
wing. It just looks cool. Okay.
Remember, because we did a
Kefka
podcast
has
on
6 wings.
Yeah. We did a podcast on FF10, and it was around that time when he said something, I can't remember the direct quote, but something along the line of, this time I was very intentional with all the designs, right?
Yes.
Thematically intentional.
Yes.
And he may not have necessarily been that way prior to FF10 designs.
That makes sense.
Other than just making them look, dope or whatever.
Yeah, which this does look cool. The goddess statue looks really cool, but it's good because you've got the woman on top that is the beautiful form of the goddess, and then underneath you have the demon. And this is what I was mentioning before with Realm's painting. when we had to fight, what was that thing called? I can't remember the name. Chadar-nuk. But you have this like demon that lurks underneath the goddess, right? So the goddess does whatever it does, and it's like, oh, the goddess, the beautiful, what you see above, but beneath the goddess is this like horned demon creature that you end up having to fight as well. Mm-hmm. So apparently, this is funny you bring up Final Fantasy X. Yunalesca's artwork from Final Fantasy X was based on this goddess.
Oh, really?
Artwork in Final Fantasy VI here,
wow.
yeah. So, and you can see that Yunalesca kind of has those ribbons that just kind of like wrap around her body. That's her clothes.
I'm pretty sure the Japanese design for this boss was less clothed even than this one.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
So
yeah, I currently have the American version up.
Slightly censored for the American or the North American version.
Yeah,
or
absolutely true.
The version outside of Japan, I guess.
But she's got like the golden solar disc kind of that's like behind her head, right, signifying the holiness and all of that stuff. And then there's like roots going down underneath at the bottom of the demon, right? You're seeing that's kind of like the underworld aspect here. Mm-hmm. Even the concept, and then in her left hand, she's holding the sphere, this like golden sphere. But you do see this kind of similar concept with Yunalesca as well. So really cool.
Yeah. So that leads us to the final confrontation with Kefka, I think.
Yep.
Right?
This is here. This is where we're at.
Okay, so here we've got the dialogue here. Edgar says, "It's time we took the battle to Kefka's doorstep." Setzer says, "What's wrong?" Oh, I think this is all on the airship before they jump down. Celeste says something here. "The gods of the warring triad control the magic of the Esper world. If we destroy them," this is key for what comes up here in a little bit. "If we destroy them, because the magic of the Espers is in the warring triad," Edgar says, "You're worried about what might happen?" She says, "I'm not sure, but Espers and magic might vanish from the world entirely."
Yes.
Edgar says, "And if that happens, what'll happen to Terra?" So they're worried about if they kill Kefka, what's going to happen to the Espers and what's going to happen to Terra specifically.
Yes.
So they know they got to kill him, but they don't know what's going to happen to them if they do. Okay. So now you get to Kefka himself at the top of the tower. This is a really good exchange. Really, really well written, I feel. Kefka says, "Welcome, friends. I knew you'd come, so I've been practicing my greeting. How much do you have to destroy before you'll have had your fill, Kefka?" He says, "I've acquired the ultimate power. Observe." And then I think they cut to that shot where it's just like the beams.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's like the light of judgment.
Yeah.
But it's like way more harsh than we've seen it before.
Yeah.
In fact, once again, this reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy X.
Yep.
But you've got this beam that just like destroys the world.
It's a really great shot.
Really cool.
Such magnificent power. You're all nothing more than fleas compared to me now.
Yep.
Embrace your destruction. It is the fate of all things. And the party says, "To be destroyed? Maybe it is, but people can always rebuild and new lives will always be born." And he says, "And time will destroy all of those things as well. Why do people insist on creating things that will inevitably be destroyed? Why do people cling to life knowing that they must someday die, knowing that none of it will have meant anything once they do?" And Terra says, "Because it's not the end that matters. It's knowing that you have something to live for right now, at this moment. Something you've worked for, something that's worth protecting. As long as you have that, that's enough." And he says, and did you all find your somethings in this broken world that just won't die?" "Yes." "Love," says Terra. Locke
They
is
all have something.
a person worth protecting. Cyan, a wife and child who love on within me, or who live on with, they copied it wrong, live on within me. Shadow says, "Friends and family." Edgar, a peaceful kingdom. Sabin, a loving brother who always looks out for me. Remember earlier when he teases Terra? Well, I think this was only in the Woolsey translation, but don't you dare tell him I said that.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So now he says it out loud. Celeste, someone willing to accept me for who I am. Strago, an adorable little granddaughter. Realm, an obnoxious grandpa who I couldn't live without. Setzer, wings from a dear old friend. Mog, new pals, Kupo. Kefka says, "Blah, you people make me sick. You sound like lines from a self-help book."
That's funny.
Yeah.
So that's not what the Japanese says at all.
Yeah, let's.
I think it's a fun line though.
Yeah.
Well, I can't.
Oh, you don't have
I don't
it
have
pulled
any
up.
internets, and
can't
I've
pull it
clicked
up.
this.
It's gone
It's
now.
out.
Okay.
But it is something along the lines of "You guys make me sick," right?
Yeah,
It
right.
was something like that. I thought the self-help book line was pretty good though.
It's funny.
At least in part because what the characters are saying to us is
They sound like
a little bit
platitudes.
cheesy.
It's
yeah.
just like platitudes.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, ooh, I found love, I found this or that, and he's just like, you guys, this is like stupid. Like it's almost like they didn't even really get his point.
Right.
That
And they kind of did it.
no, because he's saying, yeah, my point is all those things you just said are all going away one day.
Yeah, right.
And they're like, yeah, well, they're not gone right now, so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, fine, whatever. It's just a clash of
So, yeah,
philosophies.
they're
but
just
they're
not-
talking past each other.
They're choosing not to go to the point he's talking about, right? So it's like someday these things are going to go away and you'll lose them. But we have them right now. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying someday they're going to go away. And they're just like
They aren't
they're just sort of
understanding each
running
other.
away from the point he's making.
Oh gosh,
Right?
what is that last game that we talked about where he mentioned? Maybe it was this game. No, maybe it was this game. Playing Mozart to a frog.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't this. What was that?
What game was that?
Does anyone remember what that line came from?
Yeah, that
'Cause
line.
I remember that, but I can't remember
Where it
what
was.
it's from.
If I explain this to you, it would be the same as playing Mozart to a frog. Like it just doesn't matter. There
Someone
is
else
one
will bring
line
it
here I want to read up here from Mix that he just wrote up top. So he says Kefka's nihilistic philosophy leans into the concept of mono no aware, which is an aspect of Japanese thought. Japanese cultural scholar Kazumitsu Kato wrote that understanding mono no aware in the Heian period was almost a necessity for a learned man in aristocratic society. It is a near Buddhistic insistence upon recognition of the eternal flux of life upon the earth. This is the authentic Japanese attitude towards death and disaster, that everything's changing. So it's just Kefka's view on it. And so basically Kefka's view on that flux of everything is negative. And he's saying, yeah, everything flux, therefore everything sucks. Ooh, that should be a bumper sticker. Everything flux, so everything sucks. But then Tara's like, no, everything's always in flux, therefore everything's beautiful and new and, great. And right? They're both saying the same thing. They just don't get what they're not allowing the other one to colonize their thought process.
That's an interesting point because, I think when people discuss Kefka's nihilism, right? I think nihilism generally is sort of seen in this really kind of negative way, like it's this sort of dark, almost like philosophy or ideology.
What's the word nihil?
Like
means nothing.
A cynical ideology, and where it's this miserable interpretation that life has no meaning and all these things. And I actually think it's not that. It's a really neutral thing. It's life has no meaning, therefore. Or no, I shouldn't say no meaning, no intrinsic value. There's no like objective sort of like moral values, right? Like we create all of this, right? But what Kefka is doing is leaping really far logically to do the life has no meaning, therefore I should destroy the world.
I think that's where
that part of it is not nihilistic. That's just him using nihilism as a justification for his sociopathy, right? and his desire to harm other people, his cruelty, which is something he has developed and he is blaming or justifying with this nihilistic perspective on life.
That makes sense. And he's saying, what's the difference? If everything is nothing, or if in a billion years nothing will exist, then what's the point in me just making that happen now? Like, what's the difference? So nihilism in general, if you are like in the moment, fine. If you're thinking about the future, nihilism, that's where it kind of can present some problems. And that's what Kefka's doing. He's visualizing it in the future. And he's like, oh, nothing. He's projecting it forwards. And he's saying, well, we'll just bring that a little closer. We're going to take that nothing that is the heat death of the universe, whatever it is, and we're just going to make it right now. In fact, I think he's got a line here, at least in the SNES. I'd be interested to hear what the GBA says. He says, I will create a monument to nothingness.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if they changed that line.
I'll get to it in a second.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I guess, respond to that and say that because you said it's looking to the future that you have problems. It's only
I think so.
problems based on how you interpret
Nothing.
if you interpret it as negative, which nihilism
actually a
does
good
not
point.
claim.
You're right. It's
Nihilism
neutral.
does not
It's
claim
neutral.
that it's bad
Yeah, it's neutral.
because there is no meaning in it at all.
Right.
So it is neither good nor bad. You cannot justify it either way. But Kefka is trying to justify his
You're right.
cruel sociopathic tendencies
Yes.
on the fact that there is no meaning in this.
That's
That-
true.
that
That's-
therefore,
I see your point. You're right.
And
You're
that's
right.
that's where
Yeah, you're
Kefka
right.
is actually abandoning a truer nihilistic view.
Right.
Because if he were truly nihilistic, he would see nothing wrong with the
wouldn't-
fact that everything it gets destroyed someday anyways.
Right.
Right.
And that's more of the Buddhist philosophy, which is like it could be good or bad. It's the neutral idea.
Right.
Whereas with Kefka, it's like, yeah, that's true.
So, anyways, but it is interesting to think of how he got there, because he is a victim in all of this. However unjustified his acts may or may not have been, depending on if you're a nihilist or if you have a moral point of view. And I think most people do. They have a moral set of principles.
Don't think you
and
can live without
would-
one.
Could condemn Kefka for what he's done, obviously. So when I
Sure.
say that, just keep that in mind. I understand that. But he was a victim of the
Yeah.
experiments that
Yes.
happened to him, right?
Yes, yes.
So he developed resentment from this. It did something to him psychologically. Like, obviously, his mind broke in the process.
That's what that
Who-
soldier says, yeah.
Who knows what he was like before these experiments started?
There is a rumor on the internet that Clyde Bahram, that Bahram is Kefka. I don't buy it. I don't think
I don't
it's true.
either.
But the idea was that Bahram got injured, and then Clyde books it, and then these people find him and then resuscitate him and then bring him back to life as this new being through Sid's lab, basically, and then it becomes Kefka.
Yeah, I don't like
Anyways,
that.
I doubt it's true. I'm just bringing it up that there's like some people speculate as to Kefka's former life that he may have been something like a normal dude or something like that up until the point he received Sid's treatment in his factory.
By the way, someone has just brought up it was BioShock that line came from.
Oh, BioShock.
It would be like trying to
That's right.
play Mozart for
I forgot about BioShock.
that line.
That's
That
right.
came from BioShock. Was the game we just did before this one.
Play Mozart to a tree frog, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where
line.
that line came from.
Such
Amazing.
a good line.
Now, we don't really know. There's not really even a point in speculating whether or not he was already kind of a messed up guy, and the
Yeah.
psychological, damage it did only like heightened his
Yeah.
already existing sociopathy.
I think people
Or-
want to think that he was always evil to begin with. That
Yeah.
way it justifies us just like
Sure.
doing whatever we need to do, being like, oh, he was never redeemable to begin with.
Yeah.
But the more likely scenario is that he was like a normal dude.
Normal
at some
person,
point.
and
Yeah.
and this had such a terrible effect on him that it really turned him into this.
Yeah.
Either way, he was a victim of this experimentation. It made him bitter and resentful,
Yes.
and vengeful. So that vengeance was then justified through this idea that, well, it's all meaningless anyways. So even if I do this, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's justifying these cruel desires
Yeah.
inside of him that, how do you deal with that? How do you then go like, well, I'm going to do this, so then how do I therefore, go about justifying that?
Yeah.
Nihilism was his scapegoat.
That was it.
So,
It's like a Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment.
sure. Yeah. Okay, so Kefka goes on to say here, I wield the greatest power in existence. You may as well be the dirt on the bottom of my boots, or the dirt stuck to the bottom of that dirt.
That's good.
You can't destroy everything, they say. People will always have dreams.
Well, there's something to that. Hold on. The dirt on the bottom of that dirt.
Yeah.
That's so good. This is the Bible once again, but the idea of you are less than dirt, right?
Yeah.
You aren't dirt. You are the thing that goes underneath the dirt.
Yeah.
I actually think this is I think God says this about humans at some point. He's like, dirt does what it does, but you guys are even lower than dirt. Anyways, I think that's really funny. Kefka's basically using that type of verbiage because he thinks he's God now. He has elevated himself to the top position.
Well, and it's important to state he basically is, because he took the power from the gods of this world.
All three of them. So he is, and he's setting himself up as like the fourth statue of the warring triad, the one that is the greatest, right? Yeah. So the three were in balance, but then there was the fourth, right? This is a thing. I brought up the triangles. I'm going to say it now because this is the best way to visualize what I think is happening here. And I'm going to have to bring this up again later because with the boss fight, we're seeing the number 4 creep in above the 3 as like this hidden, like extra, like super powerful version, right? Mm-hmm. Think of it as the Triforce, right? You've got the triangle. You've got each 3 triangles within the triangles. So 3 triangles making up a unity of a single triangle. But if you can visualize the Triforce in your mind, and we'll put one up on the screen here, there's an upside down triangle implicit in the space where there's a 4th triangle. The Triforce is not 3 triangles, it's 4.
Yeah.
But we only see 3 because we're looking for the upright, the ones that the microcosm of the macrocosm, right? It's a big triangle and then it's made up of these littler triangles. But there is an implicit 4th triangle that actually subverts the other 3 and it's pointing downwards. It's the shadow triangle. This would be like the shadow of the gods, the shadow of Link, or whatever it is, right? There's an extra one there. There's space for one, but it's currently not being fulfilled. What Kefka is doing is he's becoming that shadow triangle of the Triforce, basically. Like he's putting himself into the gods, he's usurping their power, and he's making it all about him, and he's inverting it in the process, making it point a different direction. And you see this is so good because when we go to fight Kefka, he has all 3 gods below him, right? And they're all like lined up in this like amalgamation of unholy death. And then he is above them as the 4th, right? The most powerful of them all. And this harkens back to some Jewish writings in the Kabbalah. This is where I brought this up to you on the drive over here. Right. I'm like, I don't know that this is totally where it's going, but I think it's worth bringing up because it's really good. There's these different levels of analysis within the Kabbalah. You have like the lowest level, and then you have like the highest level, right? And the lowest level is like the bodied analysis, like the physical, and then the highest level is like wisdom or the ineffable, right? The stuff that can't even be said because it's just, but people can kind of grasp it, right? It's like the wisdom and the highest way to know things. And there's those 4 levels. They correspond with earth, water, air, and then fire. Fire is that top level. That's like the weird, ethereal, like 4th element that doesn't really fit with the other 3. You've got earth, air, fire, or earth, air, and water, and they all kind of like coexist in this like natural way. But then fire shows up, and it's like, you can see the ancients talking about this too. It's like, what is fire, man? Like, this is weird. It's basically just destructive. It's something only humans can really make, right? And that's where the myth of Prometheus comes from. But like, what is this? It's this new thing that somehow actually has power over all the others, right? Like if there's air and fire, fire wins. If there's rock and fire, well, fire can eventually melt stone, and that's where you get lava or whatever. And then of course, fire evaporates water. Like fire is this like, this element of the gods that presides over the other 3 elements, right? It's that hidden, like implicit upside down triangle within the Triforce that kind of like can make or break the unity of the tri-unity that's happening there. I see that here, and it's so good that Kefka, he just places himself up top of the other 3, because there's 4 stages to that boss fight. He's the implicit 4th, but because he can't live in harmony with the other 3, he usurps all their power. He lets them all be killed before him. He won't work with them. He's just trying to extract. It ends up failing, right? Because it all goes into him. He becomes the monad, so to speak. He's the one, but it's supposed to exist as something of a triad or a quaternad or whatever, but with the implicit 4th. But he destroyed the other 3 in favor of just himself. And that ends up essentially being his downfall, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a bit of a rant, but I feel like that's a deeper way to kind of read what exactly is happening here with Kefka, and knowing that people like Nomura or Takahashi or Soryasaga or some of the people who I know were deeply into this stuff had a lot to do with the art and the story of this game. Yeah.
I
don't think it's out of bounds for me to kind of bring up the Kabbalah.
No, and there's actually quite a few interesting readings of the design of this boss that we can go over here. I like that one a lot. That one's really cool because it brings in the whole triad sort of motif.
Exactly.
Right? So here, let's get into it after I get through the rest of the dialogue. So Kefka says, life, dreams, hope, where do they come from and where do they go? Such meaningless things, I'll destroy them all. The end draws near. So then you fight
and that's when the sun sets, by the way.
Yeah,
it's so good because you look behind him and everything's orange and it's like this really cool glow. And then the sun sets and it disappears and then the background turns bluish. And that's when he starts using his... the light of judgment and starts breaking the world and stuff. And it's like, that's when the sun goes down. That's when hope disappears, basically.
Yeah.
And we'll have one last motif on that whole evening star thing here after the fight.
Yeah. Okay, so.
Oh, also, it's twilight. The sun just set. This is so good. I love this. It's not just twilight. This is like the eternal twilight. This is the make or break moment, right? So I wrote down here, this is the twilight of the gods. It is literally the twilight of the gods because they're all about to wane in power and they're all about to die. Like it's all going to be over. The gods are about to leave this world. But it's also twilight for humanity. Like this is the make or break moment, right? And so, anyways, I love how the weather, once again, the weather or the celestial patternings of the lights are kind of reflecting what's happening here on the ground level.
Yeah. Okay, so going over the symbolism of this final boss, because it's a crazy design. I mean,
it is.
I've got it pulled up here. You know, you got this first level, which is this giant demonic, buff-looking... Well, Kefka is sort of represented in each part of this, so it's kind of Kefka's face.
Oh, they have his face, yeah.
But they have these like vents of steam everywhere. These sort of like mechanical tubes coming out of his back.
That's right. That's
moves
creepy.
Upward, and then you got a second phase here with a lion head, kind of made of that mechanical, looking material. And then you've got what appears again to be Kefka sitting in the front.
Yeah.
And then some other people, almost like Renaissance-like paintings of bodies, just kind of in these contorted, positions.
Really screwy positions.
And then it continues
what's really
upward.
Good? That middle one there, the fact that Kefka his skin is blue.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This
makes him
is
stand
something
out.
I see this a lot. This is something you see in Hindu depictions of gods like Krishna, or a lot of the Hindu gods you will see depicted as having blue skin, right? My daughter actually had a killer explanation for why their skin is blue because I looked at her. I was asking her. We were at the Hindu temple near our house, and she was just looking around at all the artwork, and there was this really cool scene of these beings that were over this body whose spirit was being, I think I brought this up in Silent Hill too, whose spirit was being like pulled out. And the angelic beings were all blue, whereas the demonic beings, and they were both vying for the spirit of this newly deceased individual.
Right.
And the demons were coming up trying to pull the spirit down. And then the angels were there with their weapons, and they were in gold and blue skin, just like you see with Kefka here.
Yes.
And I asked her, I said, why do you think their skin is blue? And she thought for a little bit, and she looks outside and she goes, because blue's the color of the sky. And I thought about that and I was like, wait a second, because the angelic beings, the celestial beings that come from above, blue.
Yep, blue.
Because I'm always like, oh, white. In the Western tradition, it's always white. And I'm like, wait a second, the sky is freaking blue. Like, of course that makes sense. Anyways, really good observation by my genius daughter. Just had to tout that a little bit here.
That's great. So you keep moving up, and then you get the third level, which is you have like the lady here, almost a motif of the goddess that you talked about earlier.
Yes, looks like
and
the
then
goddess.
Sort of a Kefka-esque figure sort of lying back in the lap of this.
Yes.
So
do you have...
Yeah, I'm going to go over
good,
each stage, but I'm just kind of showing it off first so we know like each one looks like. So,
and it gets lighter and lighter the further up you go.
You're going up into the sky. Here you're still below the clouds. And it's not until you ascend above the clouds that you reach Kefka himself in his god
and the fire and the sun
form.
And the beams. And,
right.
It's so good.
So now that we have that everyone has seen that image in detail, the official player's guide of this game, which is not canonical, it was written by people from probably, I don't know, maybe Square, but maybe Nintendo of America even, or somebody. Sometimes
they hire.
Like that.
What was it like that? that Hyrule Historia, that they hired like a third-party company
yeah.
to write it, basically, and it's
Right.
like not actually canonical.
Yeah, right. Like there's still parts of it that that they're speculating on. Or so
Yeah.
in the player's guide, the official Final Fantasy VI player's guide, it states that this is a rematch with the three gods. So
that seems to
each
be the
one is
case.
a representation
So
of
Doom,
each stage.
the Guardian, and the Goddess.
and then the goddess. So
Makes sense.
that is kind of the way they explained it there. And, that seems to be fairly logical sort of, reading of it. But
Yeah.
there's some others that are interesting too. A popular theory online is that this is kind of like a representation of Dante's Divine Comedy.
Yes, yes, I've heard that.
So
yeah. Very
the
cool.
very first stage you have, and this is the most obvious visually to make a connection to
make that connection.
is the first, because Satan in Dante's Inferno
Yeah.
is trapped from like the waist. He's
Yeah.
like encased in ice, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like his upper torso and his arms and
Yeah.
wings are above.
And he has three heads at least.
Yeah, his three
in the thing.
faces.
Because
So-
two of his mouths are chewing on the people who killed Julius Caesar.
Yes.
And then the middle mouth is chewing on Judas Iscariot.
Yeah,
So
right.
that they can be punished forever. Basically.
Forever.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, you can see. I have
you
a
do.
picture here.
Yeah, I see.
You see the feet of Judas in his mouth.
Crazy.
So, obviously not every piece of this was just copied over, but the idea being it might have served as an inspiration for this design because it's at the waist again, right? You have this kind of mist or steam around the waist.
Could
you
be
kind of
ice.
move up to a second phase here where you have a bunch of people that seem distressed, kind of like I said in that
Purgatory, right?
Yeah, purgatory.
Yeah.
Kind of in that Renaissance sort of painting-esque way of how they depicted people in misery and their bodies in these
They're
contorted forms.
yeah.
It kind of gives that feel, right, of like a purgatory. And then you come up here, and this, I think it has actually been stated. Let me grab I don't have the internet. Crap, I guess I can't bring that up.
Well, hold on. I read it.
Michelangelo's
Pieta.
Pieta.
The Pieta.
Yeah, the Pieta.
Yeah, I wrote this down.
Yeah.
Up top, we have an image that is based on Michelangelo's Pieta, a sculpture of Jesus lying in Mary's lap after the crucifixion.
Right. And so if you're using that as, I guess, a representation of going from purgatory upwards toward, heaven after that, you'd have all three stages of Dante's Divine Comedy, the three-act, story there, and then Kefka would be the fourth stage. So I think that's
The hidden fourth.
kind of an interesting interpretation. I wouldn't say that.
It seems right enough to me.
Yeah, it seems like maybe elements of Dante's Divine Comedy served as an aesthetic, visual inspiration, but I don't think that these things are meant to represent
I don't think so either.
hell, purgatory, and heaven.
No, because you're still fighting the goddess
thematically
and,
that
like,
makes
killing
no
her.
sense.
Yeah.
In Final Fantasy VI's story.
No,
but
it's just visual.
certainly
Yeah.
they could have served as visual inspirations. I could see
agree.
that for sure.
Yeah.
Now, the way that I read this was more about Kefka's ascension through the game.
Oh, cool.
So
Sure. Oh, interesting.
we start
Hey.
at Kefka's bitterness and resentment,
Yes.
his anger, at being a victim of whatever happened to him, and being discarded or constantly treated as a court jester, as a joke,
Right,
as
yeah.
somebody not to be taken seriously.
And the Emperor kind of did that.
Yeah, and which we did too when we
Right.
fought him,
That's
because
true.
he was not a difficult boss most of the time.
Right.
And
We
he
didn't
seemed
give him his due.
like a joke character. And nobody really gives him any of the praise, I guess I'll put it, that he thinks he deserves. So we move on to the second phase here, and this is definitely him, in my opinion, in the front. That's Kefka. And he's sort of he's contending with his peers here, with the others, whether it's in the Empire or against the Returners. They're all struggling for supremacy.
Yeah.
Whether it's Emperor Gestal, whether it's the Returners, they're all working towards that power that he's ultimately going for in the goddess statues, the god statues, right? The three, the triad, the warring triad.
Triad.
They're all fighting over that power, whether it's to leave it as is and keep the world in balance, whether it's to take that power to create order.
It's like a tension.
Yeah. They're all contending over that, and he's a part of that, and they're all fighting for that thing and contending with each other. But ultimately, he's the one who receives the boon from the gods. He's the one that gets the power. This enemy in English, because it's each part of the boss has different targets.
Yeah.
So like at the bottom, you can target the face or both hands.
Right.
And then up here, there's the tiger's face, and there's other multiple sort of, targets of fighting that part of the boss. Then you get up to the top, and you have both of these. The one in the back, the woman figure, is called Lady in English.
Lady,
but it's
yeah.
Maria in
right.
Japanese.
That's right, which is Mary.
Which
Yeah.
is Mary,
Yeah.
right? So that's most certainly meant to be inspired by
There's a
Michelangelo's
cross.
Pieta,
Yeah.
right? But the idea is that Kefka sees himself as having received the boon, having received the powers, having
think
received
so.
the blessing.
Yeah.
In terms of the passage of power to him from the gods. And then he ascended
Ascends,
through the
exactly,
clouds
yes.
up to become the god. That was the way I sort of read
That's
what
really
this
cool.
represents.
I like that. I love
It's
that
more
reading.
like Kefka's story
Yeah.
is represented here in this boss. His story through the game.
That's so cool.
Or the way he views himself, I guess, right?
Yeah,
the way he
yeah.
views his own
His
hero's
transcendent journey, yeah,
or whatever
yeah.
you want to call it. And now he's become the god. He's indestructible. He's whatever. Of course, he's not, and we defeat him. But that was kind of the reading that I pulled from it. So I think and I really liked your interpretation too, the whole inverted triangle, because the warring triad and just the shape itself, it really has a lot more meaning to me after some of the stuff that you said when we went over that part.
Oh, right, the Pythagoreans.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's like, it's just like the shape itself, the balance contained within the geometry is
Right,
important.
yeah.
It's not just they don't just call it the warring triad because it's cool sounding. It's like,
Yeah.
There's actual, there's meaning found in the balance of the three.
And you know
points.
what's great? How does Kefka survive that moment where right before the destruction of the world, when the Emperor or Celeste is trying to kill him,
Yeah.
he goes into the middle of the warring triad.
Yeah, right.
He stands in the middle.
the middle of it.
He fills that upside down triangle of the Triforce. He takes his rightful place in the middle
Yeah.
of the three and gains immortality because of it. Nobody can hurt him. All their magic is deflected.
Yeah.
And he's able to command the power from the middle. He becomes the unofficial fourth warring.
Yeah.
So it's a warring quaternad at that point.
Quaternad,
But
yeah.
he's the only one that can still move and think and talk and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he takes that. So that space was always there. It was just empty. He moved to fill that space.
Right.
So that's great.
Yeah. Good stuff. If I were ever to get a tattoo, which probably won't happen, but if I were ever to get one,
Is it going to be this?
there's two tattoos I would ever consider getting. One would be a sleeve with this.
There you
so
go.
a sleeve all the way up the arm
Yeah.
would be this boss, because it's really that cool.
It is very
Visually and just art, from the art standpoint, but what it represents too, like all the different things that you could talk to people about when they
That's
say, "Hey,
true.
what's that tattoo?"
Conversation starter.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
But the other one would be, what's the name of the tattoo on Sydney's back in the root inverse?
The root inverse.
The root
That's
inverse on the
right.
back. That's the only other one I've ever considered. That one would be cool because then you could hide it pretty much underneath anything.
That's
You
true.
go into
That's
interviews, you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about your sleeve.
Wear
of-
long sleeves in 120 degree weather. Why are you wearing long sleeve shirt?
Right. But root
I just
inverse
like
you
to.
could hide
It's
really
true.
easily. But those are the only two I would ever get, and I'm not going to. But if I ever get tattooed, those were the two things I would get. This would be one of them.
Dude, for me, I always wanted an armband of the
One Ring.
The One Ring.
Yep.
The Ajnaj Gimbatu. Yeah, the in
That'd be cool,
Elvish,
too.
all the way around the arm.
That'd be cool. That'd be dope too.
So cool.
Okay.
Never gonna do it.
So let's see. Kefka has been defeated, and the tower begins collapsing. Party. The tower's collapsing. There's no time to lose.
Yeah.
Come on, the airship's just ahead. They all start taking off. Come on, everybody. We can make it if we work together. Now, they kind of did an interesting thing here. Let me get through the rest of this.
Oh, how they do the cutscenes and all that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the magicite, magic is disappearing. If espers are fading from the world now, what'll happen to Terra, right? Which we talked about
Yeah.
earlier. Come with me, I can use the last of my power to guide you out. And then she morphs and starts to fly out. Now, it kind of starts the ending credit sequence here with the...
Yeah, that was so interesting. Yeah.
Before you really have resolved this yet. So
Yes,
it's kind
but
of...
it's not really credits. It's just
No.
Gao as Gao.
no, it's not-
Umaro
I don't
as
get
Umaro.
that. I don't get it. Why did they
and
do that?
you as your freaking self. Yeah, that was so funny.
There is at least one really cool thing, as weird as this is.
Well,
you get the middle names of Edgar and Sabin,
Edgar,
which are
which
Roni and Renee, which were then reused in Xenogears.
Well,
Which
it's only cool because of Xenogears.
Yes.
It didn't come for 4 more years after this
Xenogears
game.
wasn't out yet. Yeah.
Wasn't a thing.
Yeah. But that it's interesting looking at the history of these developers, which we've been looking at thoroughly for years on this podcast now. Roni and Renee were characters that she had already thought of before Xenogears ever went into development.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
The story of Xenogears had been in the minds of Tetsuya Takahashi and Kaori Tanaka for quite a long time. I'm sure they developed it for a long time before they actually made the game. This is evidence of that. And you see parts of Roni and Renee's, and we've already talked about this, but parts of Roni and Renee's story in Edgar and Sabin, right? They're kind of similar characters. So she sort of took that story from this game and then developed it further into, what they had been talking about together and developing. But this, I don't even know how to start talking about the ending of this game because there's so much to say. Both really positive, but also some things we talked about being a little bit confused about.
Some questions.
And some questions that lead to some... It's like a feeling like there's not some resonance quite on a few points. We're not really like feeling like, oh, this worked completely the way we hoped it would.
It did not end the way that you would expect, and there are some questions.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss that.
Why it happened. But real quick,
I
have a few things that I want to bring up first, because we didn't touch on the track Dancing Mad.
Yes, yes.
This is good.
Yes.
Did you
There's
read
3 movements in the song.
Yes. Did you read the, so Mix, one of our patrons, he sent an article on, I think it was Destructoid, but it said like, Dancing Mad, a critical analysis, something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Mix sent me a few excerpts, which are very good. So from that article, it says, but instead of playing this straight, all the religious symbolism is a mockery, right? So you've got all the religious symbolism, but it's all being turned upside down. It's all being used improperly, right? In Kefka's mind, there is nothing worthwhile in the world. No faith, no hope, no love, and certainly no gods. After all, look how easily he stole the 3 goddesses' power at the floating continent. The gods, but goddess, one of them's a goddess.
Sure.
Hey, by the way, how did he get so powerful? Like, I don't think I will ever understand that.
I think
we'll talk about that.
The magicite he collected.
Sid.
The more magicite he collected, the stronger he got.
I got that. I know. But, like, he's just one-shotting espers, and he, like, even before this.
Probably because he already had magicite. I think it's like the more magicite he collects, the stronger he gets.
So he was so dang powerful. He waited until the Emperor stabbed him in the back before he revealed that he basically already was a god this whole time, like for a long time now. Anyways, I have questions.
Sure.
We'll keep reading this though. So he's displaying himself as this enlightened being to try and hammer home the fact that everything that the heroes are fighting for, everything they hold dear, is worthless if he is the most powerful being in the world. The savior that is represented in the Pieta, meaning the goddess, the top of that tripartite boss, whatever, the third movement of the boss, is supposed to be the paragon of humanity, a physical manifestation of light and truth. By putting himself in that position with the glorious hymn of praise in the background, he's denying the existence of that light at all and saying that the only thing present in human hearts is despair and destruction. So also that article talks a little bit about the movements and how the movements of the song, because it's a kind of a crazy song, right?
Yeah.
In fact, you did a remix of the song,
I did.
right?
I did.
We should play that, actually.
A metal sort of, well, it's kind of like a mixture of the... it's got the organ and stuff in it too, but it's kind of like a metal remix of the song.
It's very cool, by the way. It's very well done.
Thank you.
But you've got these different movements going throughout it, right? And it represents the different, aspects of the boss. Is that what I say? The different aspects of the boss?
Yeah, the
stages,
different stages, tiers.
And it goes through some like kind of sad music to this like frantic, kind of crazy music to this like, it kind of puts it all together. It builds it all up in a way that I think is consistent with what you said about Kefka's character.
Yes.
Right. And the song being called Dancing Mad is obviously a reference to him. Right?
Yes. Right.
And so the song is just going through until at the very end, you get this almost like, almost churchy sounding, like this religious sounding music. That's just like seems very triumphant. Yes.
Yeah. It's
and
awesome.
it's really cool. The movements of the song are just really cool.
Well, it's a, It's a callback to the very beginning of the game, the title screen, that organ. Doo,
Yes.
doo,
Yep.
doo,
Dun, dun. Yep.
and right, and he like descends. So
Yes.
it's almost bookended by that little
Right.
musical.
So because now we're at the
theme.
ascent. That's a good point. That's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, exactly right.
No, so good.
Yes. This leads kind of right into the first point I wanted to make about the ending, which is the music is so brilliant that it almost makes it that whatever question I'm left with, or like, oh, I don't get it. Did we just kill all the Espers by doing this? Did we genocide the Espers or whatever it might be?
It feels like an artistic decision. You know?
It's almost like forgivable because the music is so freaking
so good.
majestic. It's just it's unbelievable. When especially, I mean, if this were used now in a modern film soundtrack, it would be just godlike, unbelievable, like all-time great music for a film soundtrack.
Yeah.
Now you take into account this was in 1995 in a video
It's a video game.
and it's like, what the fetch, dude? What the fetch?
Yeah.
The use of leitmotif here is absolutely genius.
Yeah,
and
that's right. And the way the songs move into each other, right? Like the movements.
Yeah, it's a medley.
Mix. Oh, it's so.
And
good.
it is just a perfect reflection of the whole journey, and all the characters, and the theme of the game, which we've all been hammering on at this point, about that ray of light in the hopelessness and the being able to let go of previous attachments and move forward and fight for for the future instead of being trapped in your past and all of that stuff.
Locked in the past.
It is all said with music.
Yeah.
And you just feel it. And this is something that I did a video on a couple of years ago, but there's something about music that is intuitive, emotionally intuitive, in a way that language seems to not be capable of.
Yes, absolutely.
There seems to be something that is that can be communicated through music that is stronger, more resonant emotionally, more, I guess, spiritual, although that's not really the word I want to use, but touches you somewhere that language can only like approach but not quite get to, or language gets there when it's accompanied by music.
There you go.
Right?
There you go. Poetry and music.
Yeah, right. So in the video, I kind of talked about, I was doing some research at the time, and I don't know if any of this research stands today as it did at the time I did the research, which was several years ago.
4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. But there were some ideas out there that music may have predated language in terms
I've
of
heard
like
that.
human evolution.
I think Pinker and Dawkins, I've heard them talk about that before.
Right. And so like rhythm and music was maybe the first way in which humans started communicating to each other, even before spoken word or through language or writing or whatever it might be. And you look into the animal kingdom, there are a lot of animals that do dances or that have different rhythms, and they communicate this way. And that seems intuitive. It seems like that's probably true, right? Different pitch and different rhythms.
Right.
So there is something about music that that goes deeper somehow in communicating specific types of emotions. And for whatever reason, Nobuo Uematsu, among others at this time, seemed to be on the planet at the right stage in time to speak directly to me.
There you go.
And this is just amazing. And it's not something I can articulate. I don't think it's possible. Because again, I feel like the music speaks for itself. You kind of just have to feel it with the music. I can't really describe it. But as I'm listening to that, and this is what I think all great RPGs should do in their endings. And this is another thing Chrono Trigger does really well. Mm-hmm. You get to the end, and as you're watching the credits, you reflect over the journey through the music and visuals. There's not dialogue because you're just seeing credits roll or whatever it might be. But you're like thinking back on what did we learn through this experience? Like what was the meat of this? What was the point? What was it that we took away from this? And the music is sort of taking you back from the beginning to the end of the journey. And that's what leitmotif is so good at doing, because we're revisiting character moments, we're revisiting scenes, we're revisiting impactful parts of that story through music that tied us to those parts through the use of melody and theme. right? So that theme represented this, and that theme represented this, but now it's done in this different way. That sort of is all weaved together in this medley that just like takes you through the whole journey a second time during the credits section. And that is my absolute favorite way of doing a credit sequence.
Yeah.
To me,
this game did that very well.
Yeah, that's the best way to end a game like this, is to make you relive it again and go like, oh man, that was so great. And so whatever parts of this that we're about to go into and be like, I don't know about this, just understand. Like, all of it to me is forgivable because of how artistically crafted this sequence is. The visuals too, like the way the ship flies through all these different vistas is just so cool. Beautiful,
especially for its time, man.
It's unbelievable.
So good.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing with the Epoch, the time traveling machine in Chrono Trigger that flies around the world and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that thing of going again. It's kind of like you're revisiting places in the world.
Yeah.
You're revisiting the musical themes. You're revisiting the story again.
Old
you're
friends.
going through it.
Yeah.
You're reliving the journey in this sort of compact form. So I love that about this.
You know, the word remember is to put together again, right?
Yes.
So to remember something is to piece things back together. Because, like, think of the word dismember.
Yes.
Take things apart. To remember is to put it all back together. And that's what the music does in this scene. It re-puts back together the whole game, right, up to the point. And it helps you to then remember in your mind the whole story of the game and experience it kind of like as a single moment instead of this like 30, 40 hour thing.
Right.
It's like, boom, this like 5-minute piece that just like, it just remembers the game in your mind, right? Just like without you even wanting it to, it just happens, right? Yeah, that's something that's really hard to explain. It's very cool.
Really cool. And another thing I really love about this is that during this credits sequence, they're showing the escape from the tower as it's collapsing.
It took me a minute to realize that's what they were doing. I thought we were seeing scenes from the distant
from
past.
the past or something.
But it's like, no, this is all happening now.
Yeah, right.
So because you see the book, there's like an open book and like pages are flipping.
And I feel like
I was like, okay, we're going back
rotoscoped photographs of a real book because there's like 5 pages. There's like motion blur on it and stuff that makes it look very realistic.
It looks really good.
Yeah, I feel like that's what they did, but
that could be it.
But they bring some humor back in because the World of Ruin has sort of lacked that a little bit in comparison to the first part of the game, where it was full of levity and humor all the time, and so all these little escape sequences they show with the characters are really funny and charming. So you see they like you were saying, Cyan as Cyan Garamond, and they show his katana kind of on that little table. Right, and they have his theme playing in a new form, in a leitmotif. And then they show a little scene, Edgar, Cyan, could you hit that switch down there? Because he's holding on. And Cyan's like,
so funny.
Mechanical devices are not my strong point.
It's like, dude, push a button.
And he doesn't know what to do.
Well,
he
looks at it from all different perspectives. He's like trying to figure it out.
And then he like, just boom, like gets on it. I do believe I'm getting better, though. I liked that better in the Woolsey version, where he's like, you got to show the machine who's boss or something like that.
Because he like jumps on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
and then, Setzer, and you have the cards falling,
Yeah.
And he says, wait, like whatever you think, because there's 2 paths. It's like, which way should we go? And he flips the coin. And he's like, no, not that way. Go that way.
Yes.
And that one had an explosive device or some sort of booby trap in it.
Sometimes you have to feel your way through these situations. Yeah.
And then it says something about Daryl. That was what you always used to say, wasn't it, Daryl?
That's right.
And then for Edgar and Sabin, they have the coin flipping on the little table there, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I wanted to dump all my responsibility on you, says Sabin. I knew you'd look out for the kingdom. I wanted to be able to look out for you. That's why I went off to become stronger. And then
in SNES, he says, I guess that's why I have these stupid muscles.
Yes, right. I guess that's so what funny. These stupid muscles are for, or whatever he says.
Yeah, he's I love him, man.
After that, you get Mog, and I think his is some kind of music box or something like that, like a tree music box, and little Moogles are like dancing in front of it. Help me, Kupo. The hair, watch the hair. I'm not a stuffed animal, Kupo. Umaru's after that. I think that's the skull and bones. It won't open, says Celeste. He just comes and like punches his way through the wall. Right.
That's
and
right. That's right.
Gogo's next. We already talked about that one. He has to mimic what Celeste does to like open the path. I think his was a mask or something on the table. for what was Gauze again? His little trinket.
Oh, it's the helmet.
The helmet.
Yeah, the underwater device.
The underwater helmet.
Yeah.
That was great, actually. I love that. Shortcut, take shortcut. And he just like falls down the mountain.
Oh, it's even funnier because at the end, after he's like, good, that worked, great. And then he pushes
Celeste further down. Shortcut, go.
Shortcut.
Fantastic. Loved it. And then for Locke and Celeste, it's the roses and then the bandana.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, this place is... I actually really liked this one. The place is breaking apart, and Celeste is running, and she drops the bandana that she had got from the bird, from the I don't know if it's a dove or a seagull, but
it was probably a seagull.
Probably a seagull.
A white, but it's also fulfills the role of something like a carrier pigeon.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. They use it as
it's
that.
either a pigeon or a seagull, but it's white. So doves are basically just white pigeons.
Yeah, right.
And so I say dove because it helps, it's a white bird either way.
So she goes back for it and she slips as the ground breaks and he catches her and I won't let you go. This is what happened with Rachel. Rachel fell. He wasn't able to grab her. He grabbed Celeste. I promise you I won't let go.
I didn't make that connection.
He pulls her up. Are you crazy? You almost got yourself killed for that. And they run off. He pushes her forward. So I liked that moment for that reason. And then Tara is last. I didn't get hers. It's like two little wine glasses or something.
2 cups. One of them was heavily ornamented. The other one was like just a plain cup. In my mind, I was I don't know, but in my mind, I was like, oh, like Holy Grail, right? You have this like really nice cup, and then you have this like the cup
more
of a
plain
carpenter.
one.
Yeah. I don't know what it was trying to say, but all I thought of was like, oh, it kind of looks like a grail.
I have no idea what that's supposed to represent.
Me neither, really.
Not a clue. Maybe somebody in the comments like Mix is about to tell us.
Maduin and Madeline. Human and divine, so the plain cup and then the golden chalice.
Okay.
Sure, that could be it.
Okay. I buy it. Well, especially because
she chose wisely, is what Snipeland says.
There you go.
He chose poorly.
So I buy that because in this scene, this was my favorite one. Maduin, the magicite, leaves because all the magicites are sort of disappearing now. They're sort of like dissolving and going away.
Back. They seem to be back in Sid's lab.
Yeah, because I guess that got sort of encompassed in the tower. It's like all of Vector sort of like
it's
kind
crazy.
of amalgamated into this tower or something.
Which was a move upwards, just like all of the goddesses got, turned into this upward moving thing.
Yeah.
Basically the ziggurat, which I was already comparing to the Tower of Babel, being a ziggurat, became this really tall tower with the judgment of God trying to, pull down the heavens and end the world. And I'm like, okay, and now it's definitely the Tower of Babel.
Yeah. So she says, Father, and Maduin says, Tara, we must part now. We Espers will disappear from this world. You will fade away as well, because she's half Esper. Maduin says, but perhaps if the human part of you feels something strong enough, then maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to remain here as a human.
So the legend is true.
Whether she disappears or stays, the magic that she had will go.
Yeah, either way. Yeah.
And she'll become a true human at that point.
Just a normal person.
With no magic, right? That's what she'll lose if she ends up staying.
But she needs to have attachments on Earth, which, anyways, it's just an interesting
that was what I was about to say, is the whole game is about leaving behind your attachments.
And then it's like, hey, if you're really attached.
If you get really attached to something on this Earth, maybe you can stay around longer. And there's a little dissonance thematically in a couple of things here.
And even in Japan, which heavily emphasizes kind of that Buddhist way of kind of, learning to let go and take life in flow. One of the ideas within at least ancient Japanese belief was that the reason why spirits linger on the earth after they die is because of their attachments to the earth. Yeah. So now he's saying, hey, you can linger on earth if you have these hardcore attachments, as though it's a good thing. I think even in Japan, they would look at that and briefly do a double take. Like, okay, but you're going to have to get rid of those again at some point.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's move on to Realm here. So Realm's, what was her trinket? It was the paintbrush. The paintbrush.
You know what, real quick, because of what we just said?
Yeah.
I wonder if the Japanese version of the script doesn't use the word attachment. I wonder if it's just something like love or something that would make a little more. I don't have the internet. I can't do it. I'm not sure the word attachment was even used in the English version. I just think he says if you feel strongly towards something, which is the same thing. Okay.
But I don't think he uses the word attachment.
I just know
just
that
to be clear.
somebody may, think that I've made a quote up, and maybe I did. But I just, caused me to raise my eyebrow a little bit.
Yes, and I think you have reason to. And we'll go over that in a minute once we get through the rest of this.
Yes.
So hers is the paintbrush, Realm's relic that's on the table. Grandpa, don't give up yet. Sorry, dear. Any more whining out of you and I'll paint your picture. Oh, no, anything but that. That's right. Realm says, but, someday I really would like to paint your portrait on a canvas, I mean. Oh, Realm, look what you've done. You've made me go all misty-eyed, and now I can't see where we're going. So they continue on. Shadows it's like what was it? It was like an apple, and then he throws 2 ninja stars into it. So it's like sitting there.
Oh,
and
that's sitting. Okay.
And then I can't remember. It's something round.
Sweet.
Is it like an apple? Anyways, it's something like a fruit that's sitting there, and 2 ninja stars go into it.
So,
And then he's with Interceptor. Go on, Interceptor, get going. Take care of yourself, boy. And then he says, Baram, it looks like I can finally stop running. Come and find me, all right? So he sends Interceptor away,
yeah.
and he goes somewhere else, and he's just sort of sitting in a corner. But he's on the airship at the end, right? He gets out.
He does.
think.
I don't know if the dog. I don't know if the dog did. Did the dog get out?
Can somebody pull up a screenshot of the end? I'm now trying to think of what he means by this. Baram, it looks like I can finally stop running. Come and find me, all right? Bram's dead, right? So is he allowing himself to die in the destruction? But I'm pretty sure he's on the ship at the end. He's on the airship.
This is Ritavu saying he's not.
I don't think you see Shadow again, says because I didn't think of that while I was watching it. Now I'm trying to chonger it in my mind. I can't remember seeing
Mick
him
says
on the ship.
He allows himself to die.
Yeah. So he basically sends Interceptor, and then he just lets himself get killed in the freaking collapse of the tower.
He did. He's helped save the world, and he's just done with life now.
He's going to go say he's sorry to Baram, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was kind of like, whoa, wait a second. But I guess, yeah, it's true. He let himself die in the destruction of the tower. Okay. Strago. Come on, Strago. Can't let yourself be shown up by a bunch of kids, he says to himself. And he runs and jumps onto the crane, right?
That's right, because he can't reach it. Yeah.
Gotcha. And he pulls it down, and they get carried up into the ship. Okay, so now everybody's on the ship.
And as this is happening, the Magicite just keeps disappearing and disintegrating.
Yes. Okay, so follow me. Terra is flying out, and they're following her in the airship. She's already guiding them out. The last piece of Magicite, oh no, it goes up and disappears. Terra, you've done enough. Your power's getting weaker, and she's falling out of the sky. And so Setzer sort of dives with the ship to catch her, right?
But it makes everyone pass out.
Yeah.
Everyone on the ship is passed out because
the G-force, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think because at first I was like, why is everyone passed out? What happened? And it's Terra's on the ship, but we saw her fall. And I'm like, oh, that must be what happened. He must have just totally
dived
pulled
and then
some crazy G's. Yeah. And then everyone just passed out.
Yeah. So let's see. Terra, you've done enough. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Terra's power fades. She begins to fall from the sky. Don't give up, Katarine. I won't either.
That's right. Now they're kind of waving to everyone on the ground now from their airship. This is really cool. There's what do we call this? This is it. So Terra helps everybody escape. We're above the clouds, right? So the kids go up to the falls, the waterfall place where that shot is just really beautiful. And the kids are looking up, and you don't see the airship. You just see basically a star.
Yes.
Just
I love that
moving
shot.
across the sky.
Love that shot.
And I'm like, oh, that's it, man. Just once again, the star, hope, ray of hope, light, in the distance, all of that stuff. Really good. It really shines through.
They have a really similar shot in Chrono Trigger with the streaking. We recreated this in one of our videos across the sky.
She's like a lens flare.
Way off in the distance.
Yeah, so the kids see the ship fly through the sky as a shooting star, right? Terra falls, but then they're able to catch her. Katarine has the baby, right? So a child is born.
A child is born in the new world with hope.
The world is renewed. The plant that those kids had planted earlier and that wasn't growing, it's sprouted. It's sprouted up out of the ground.
Yep.
It is morning. It is spring. Terra, at this point, she undoes her hair, right? She takes the ponytail out, and her hair starts flowing, right?
It's awesome.
So she's
free.
She's free. She's no
Finally.
longer bound by her other half or by any pressure from the world. She can now go do whatever she wants to do. And you know what's so funny about this game? I don't know what she wants to do herself, other than be a mother.
Be a mother
That's a big
to
one.
the kids.
She wants to go be a mother. But like, we don't know her that well. We only really ever got to see this like very stressed out, like tons of pressure on her all the time, people telling her what to do. That's the Tara we saw up until the orphanage. That's the only time we actually got to see her making her own decisions. And then even after that, we bring her along with us, and we really don't get her. She basically has to save us all the time, until finally it's like she can go be herself. And what's really cool about that isn't just, I'm not lamenting that they didn't develop her character. I think her character's plenty developed, but the question's still there. What would she do? But that's part of the idea, is that the potential for her is just infinite.
Yeah.
She is free as a bird. She can do anything. I know what all these other characters are going to do, but I don't know exactly what she's going to do because there are too many possibilities.
Yep.
I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
actually.
it's great. And it's leading it wide open, and it's leading the choice to her.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's like she can do whatever she wants to do.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's all represent. And I love how they represent that with the birds flying, and you see them flying.
Tons of birds, man.
Over.
The skies have been filled with birds once again.
All these seagulls or doves or whatever they are, pigeons, are flying free, and she's like them now. She feels as they do. She's, like you said, free like a bird. So.
Yep.
And
These shots are just
the shots are
beautiful.
just.
So
I don't
good.
think there's better
So good
shots.
on the Super Nintendo.
Like, I feel like Chrono Trigger and Terranigma both have similar imagery to this game as their sort of ending credits are going on. This really beautiful, cool Super Nintendo like pseudo. They're trying to make it look almost 3D. I love the shot as the ship like comes down and almost touches the water.
And you see
the ripples in the water, the
so
speed
cool.
of the ship, like things like that. But this is the best of all games that ever tried something like this. The imagery is just phenomenal. But it gives a similar feeling as I think the three best games that do this idea I'm talking about, where they sort of revisit the themes of the game. They revisit, you go through your journey again during the credits.
Oh, yes, yeah. Remember.
Chrono Trigger, Terranigma, and Final Fantasy VI. Each of them embody this concept. I've
not played Terranigma.
We're playing it.
We better.
It's going to be on the next vote.
People vote for it.
So obviously the next vote is between like game sequels of games we've already covered before. But I'm considering the one after that being, let's do more SNES RPGs.
Sick, please.
And having Terranigma, Chrono Trigger on that.
Oh, man.
So that's not for sure yet. I'm just thinking that for now. But the thing is the thing that's unfortunate is Chrono Trigger will get picked.
I know. I was going to say,
not that I'm complaining.
You just mentioned to me the Chrono Trigger. I'm sorry, Terranigma's not winning that one.
It's not winning, but that's bullcrap. That at least it's not on the same level in people's minds because it's as good.
Yeah.
Like, if I were to rank it, I think Chrono Trigger would beat it out a little bit in my mind just because the time I played it, I really needed that game. It has a very special place in my heart because of it. But Terranigma is just as good as Chrono Trigger.
In situations like these, we need a poll that allows for ranked choice voting so that Terranigma has a chance.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just going to be like 90% Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. Terranigma's amazing, and we will play it at some point. But it does a similar thing at the end. It has birds flying.
Nice,
and stuff like
nice.
That, so. Anyway, now, for the last few minutes, we want to talk about
real
some
quick
things.
Before we do this, there's one last thing I have to bring up. I should have brought this up for Kefka. My note came for it later. I can't remember why. Mix, once again, this is like the fourth time I'm bringing him up. Okay, we split this into two, though. So this is... Anyways, I bring him up a lot because he and I are like twins separated at birth, I'm pretty sure, some time ago. And he and I think very similarly. But he sent me on our Discord, he sent me the play Caligula from Albert Camus, and it is something else. That was a crazy play for me to like. I listened to it, but I also read it, and it is absolute madness. You can find this on YouTube. You can read the script online. It's all available, but it's basically like a nihilist. It's a historical piece talking about Emperor Caligula, who lived like 40 AD, like a long time ago. And he was like considered just a horrific emperor. Now Nero was probably worse, but just came a little bit after him. But he was just ruthless. He would just murder and just like, he would execute people all the time. But like Albert Camus kind of wrote this play around the historical figure Caligula to kind of try to explain a little bit about maybe what went wrong in his life. Because when he started acting crazy is when his sister died. And Camus kind of has this, the play is crazy because I don't know what's historical and what's not. Caligula was crazy. But in the play, Caligula, his sister who died was also his mistress and lover. Right? So there's weird stuff going on right off the bat with Caligula. But basically, he takes this Kefka spiral into madness, right? Yeah. And nihilism is part of it. But as you mentioned, it's not pure nihilism. It's also absurdism. Yeah. And that's what Camus is really well known for. Because he starts to act just absolutely irrationally and erratically in just the craziest ways. In fact, at one point during the play, he discovers a plot to kill him, and he rips up the paper and puts it in the garbage and doesn't tell anybody that he just uncovered a plot to kill him. In fact, I think it's a woman who tells him, and he says, okay, whatever, just do you want me to do anything about it? And he's like, no, just whatever happens, right? Yeah. But not in a good way, not in and I'm accepting this. It's he wants people to kill him. And in order for people to kill him, he is going to kill everybody until someone finally kills him. He's leaving that possibility open. He allows people to be armed so that they can kill him. But everyone's afraid to kill him because he's the emperor, right? So he just goes harder and harder and harder. He murders so many people. It's just rape and torture, and just he is just so bad to his own people. He's arranging a famine so that his whole empire will basically just burn and everyone will die, just so that someone will eventually just kill him, right? That's because crazy. He finds no meaning in life. It's absolute madness. It's the craziest play I've ever read in my entire freaking life, but it is the closest I think that we can get to Kefka, right? In how it's just like Kefka, there is no meaning. He doesn't know. He has no purpose except the purpose he creates, which is to end everything so that he can build a monument to nothingness. Hold on. What is the exact
line
quote?
Right. We were looking for that.
I will destroy everything. I will create a monument to non-existence. That's a really good line because think about it. What would a monument to non-existence be? And he's like, I'm going to take all of this, instead of taking what isn't there and turning it into a monument, I'm going to take all the monuments that do exist and destroy them, and it will be the greatest monument. Yeah. Once again, talking about if I bring up the Triforce, talking about the upside down triangle not really being a thing. It's nothing. It's just empty space. Right. But in the empty space, that is the monument, right? Yeah. That is the monument to nothingness, is the space in between. Anyways, it's wild. But he's going to create just this absolutely horrific scenario. But there's this line written by Albert Camus about his work here that I think it exemplifies Caligula as well as Kefka. He wrote, "One cannot destroy without destroying oneself." And that's what Camus kind of brings up throughout this play. And I think that's essentially what happens with Kefka, because when we finally beat him, he just disintegrates. Yeah. I don't think there's a last word from him. No. Right? He's just gone. He disappears. He becomes the monument to nothingness that he was trying to build elsewhere. Yeah. Right? But there's this really haunting line at the end of the play Caligula, where as Caligula is finally killed by the people around him who just cannot abide his existence any longer, his last words are, "I'm still alive." He's stabbed in the face and in the abdomen, and while he's choking on his own blood, he shouts out, "I'm still alive." I've been thinking about that ever since I read it. And I'm like, until his consciousness disappears into nothing, he's still there. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what happens and once he's nothing, it is nothing. It doesn't matter. It's just this weird kind of thing. And that as they're trying to kill him, he's shouting out that he is still alive. And it's absolute madness. It's crazy. But Kefka didn't really have that moment. He just kind of disintegrates, right? Yeah, right. But I did want to bring up Caligula's play, because if anybody wants to get to know Kefka better, you can read Caligula by Albert Camus, and you'll get to know Kefka pretty well and why he does what he does. For all the nonsensicalness of it, it is underlined by a logic that is something along the lines of a nihilistic logic. That is, if there is nothing, then I will make there be nothing. Or if there is nothing, then nothing matters. Or if there is no meaning, then nothing means anything. And if nothing means anything, then whatever. He just takes it to this extreme that most people don't take it to. But that he uses it, like you said, as an excuse to just
or a
like
justification.
bring it about and just to get all of the deepest, darkest desires of his heart to be manifest. And what he's trying to do is to become a god.
Yeah.
In fact, Caligula spends a large amount of the play trying to catch the moon.
Oh, jeez.
Literally, one day he disappears for months and he comes back with ragged clothes and he's just all sunburnt and jacked up. And they're like, "Where have you been?" He's like, "I was trying to catch the moon." Dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's the emperor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done talking about Caligula now,
crazy.
but you guys should all read it. It is an incredible work.
That sounds
art.
awesome. I'm totally going
It's
to do it.
really good. Okay, now let's talk about the
So
ending.
there's a couple of things that felt a little dissonant to us thematically about this. Now, I've had some more thoughts even just since we started the podcast that I'll add to this. So we're going to bring up some things the people in Patreon are mentioning, and we're going to bounce them back and forth. But this is obviously an invitation to the audience to also share their thoughts on this in the description.
Our thoughts
Or not
on this
description,
are
in the
not
comments.
Yes.
And
Our thoughts are not final,
Not final on this.
but let's talk because
So I think the biggest issue that we had with this is okay. So let's start with this. The reason why magic is disappearing from the world and all the magicites dissolving and all that, and why Terra would have too had she not had her strong attachments to the children of Moblius, is because their life force came originally from the triad, from the gods.
Yeah,
so the
right.
gods came to this world. They happened upon this world, I believe is how the lore states this happened.
Yeah.
They didn't make the world. They sort of like came upon it. And they're like, oh, look at this beautiful kingdom I can have. And they start warring with each other over
Right.
it. And they
that's interesting.
take the living beings of the world and transform them into espers
Yes.
as automatons to fight their wars against each other.
So espers
Right.
were once beings, physical beings.
Yes,
Yeah.
they were
Or
once.
they are still, but-
They were once, I don't know if it was humans or animals or both, of this world that they found that were transformed into these magical beings by the gods' power. So the life force of the espers comes from the warring triad. So when Kefka fused with them, when he absorbed their power, he became the source of the life force of all magic and all the espers. So when the party kill Kefka, they all go away as well.
Yep.
So the thought here is, well, there was these mentions earlier. There seemed to be sort of a running theme here that Terra was meant to represent this hope that espers and humans can coexist, that she was proof of that because she was the result of a union between a human and an esper. And yes, see, we can coexist. This can happen. But it seems at the end that no, they can't.
No, they can't. That seems to be what the game is saying.
Magic doesn't belong in this world. It was brought here by invading gods.
Yeah.
And now that we've gotten rid of them, the world will go back to what it was before they interfered. And espers are all dead. Now, it's a very ambiguous sort of thing. We don't know what happens to the spirit of espers, whether they rejoin with the spirit of the... I mean, did the gods die too? Or did the
That's a good
gods
question.
go somewhere else to another spiritual
Right.
realm and the espers' souls go rejoin with them or something like that since they originally birthed from them? We don't know the answers to this question.
We don't, except that the espers were physical beings of
Earth or this planet.
or the planet. Therefore, why would, when they die, why would they go to some special new heaven kind of place? You know,
The idea is, did we just genocide all of those creatures?
That's what I'm thinking.
And that's kind of like a not great thing to think about or linger on. It doesn't.
Genocided the creatures, and I mean, we had to kill Kefka. I don't know.
Yeah.
You got to break in. You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs, right? That's the thing. But and also. Humans and espers cannot coexist.
Cannot coexist.
Not only can they not coexist where there needs to be a barrier, it's that the espers all need to die.
Yes.
Or die.
And that
Whichever you
seems
prefer.
to be a little antithetical to this thread they had been building that
Yeah.
Terra was going to prove to everyone that, yes, we can coexist. I'm proof we can coexist. But not only that, it's not only that she can't keep that part of herself That part of what made her, that has to die
Yes.
and go somewhere else
And-
if she's
and-
to stay here.
And she needs, to be attached. Yeah.
So I don't know how I feel about that. It does make me go like, a little bit. Like, I'm not sure I love that.
I had to
But
think about it afterwards
it's-
because I'm like, this was a sweet ending, but why do I like? What exactly happened, and what are the implications of this?
Yes.
And it's kind of difficult to swallow.
So I did a little bit of searching to try and find out, like, okay, what happened to them? Has there been anything stated about this? And I didn't find anything. But maybe that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, there's already been many times in which I didn't know something, and somebody in the chat here has shared an interview I haven't seen or whatever. So maybe there is an explanation somewhere. Maybe somebody knows. Well, let me just start with this one since it's here.
Yeah, he said he bumped it.
It could be a long shot, but I need to refine this thought more. I was wondering if it was directed towards magic and the War of the Magi. The whole world of FF6 is attached or bogged down by the history of the War of the Magi, which is humanity enhanced with the power of magic that bring down destruction on each other and to the world.
And I guess it has to be that way. Magic can never be used like technology, like in a good way. It has to be eliminated because it's always turns bad.
And while it's about holding on to human memories, it could also be about moving forward without any recourse to magic or the divine, symbolizing the faith in humanity to break the cycle of the War of the Magi and to create a new future apart from a dependence on magic and its recurring threat of annihilation. I think I think all of that's probably true. It's just a shame that magic was then attached to these victimized creatures who have to die as a result of that.
And that we can't accommodate them in any way.
Like, I would have liked it if somehow, like, the power went out of Kefka and back into the Espers, and then they just left to some other realm. It's like, we can't stay in this world because this will just happen over and over again.
At least we didn't have to genocide them.
We're going to go with the gods now to, like, the gods' place wherever they were before they came to this earth and screwed everything up, and they're really sorry that they did that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why do they have to die? And what type of death is it? Again, if it's, they go live in the spirit realm with the gods now, then whatever, cool. But if it's if Kefka's right and they just dissolve into the void and don't exist anymore, that kind of sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's also fine. It could also just be the price that has to be paid for a new world, the sacrifice. We've talked about this in the past. There's always a sacrifice for a rebirth of a new world, right?
And this was the sacrifice.
It's not like that.
It'll come back to haunt him later.
Yeah, it's not like that's not reflected in real life or that's not realistic to how things work in real life. I'm just saying it puts this little bit of bitterness into the ending that makes it a little harder to swallow when you think about that. So he goes on to say, this is Mix again. Yeah, the game is quite silent on the Espers and the Magicite in the World of Ruin section. We don't even get to go back to the Sealed Gate.
Right.
The only thing we get is the War of the Magi scene with Odin in the underground castle. I forgot we hadn't touched on that part yet. That's a whole other side quest. Seems a bit ambiguous. This is Ritavu. Ambiguous about what death means to an Esper.
Yeah.
They seem less dead and more transformed.
Transformed into consciousness. Basically, a religious person would say that's still death.
Right.
You became a spirit. That's fine. Your physical existence is gone.
Yeah. Let's see. We got WP here. How many Espers are really left by the end? And
right.
Terra leaves Madeline.
Many of them died.
That's true. Most of them were already dead at this point. Well, Kefka was using them. I don't know. They were still Magicite.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't. I don't know. Ritavi says, although I suppose it's true, even the Magicite crumbles. Yeah, the Magicite is disappearing. And Sniper Land is bringing up the Phoenix Magicite, right? The Phoenix was notably too cracked to be fully powerful. So it couldn't be worked, or it couldn't be used to revive Rachel. But.
So Ritavu says that the idea of magic connects with the idea of holding on to the past versus moving forward, since Gestal was supposed to be reaching into the past for a great power.
It's true.
That's pretty good, except that now we're reaching even further back into the even more past before magic existed, and we're trying to go back to that. So, I don't know.
Before the gods came, right?
Yeah. So that is a good question. Are there any Espers left?
Yeah.
If all the Espers willingly gave their lives to become Magicite and then the Magicite disappears, that's not a genocide as much.
That's true. But did they know that was going to happen before they...
I don't know what
they must have known that.
Yeah.
The Espers must have known that because they would have known.
I have a hard time believing that Kefka killed all of the Espers that one day, that one time.
Well, sure.
All of them.
Sure. If that all the Espers came out.
Every single one.
Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But the important thing is, I think the Espers certainly would have known that their life force is tied to the Warring Triad.
Oh, I think
so.
I think
if the Espers are still aiding us in the world of ruin in our attempt to go kill Kefka, they would have known what happens to them
I think so.
if Kefka's killed.
Because every now and then they still talk.
Yeah, they still talk to us. Maduin still talk to us. I think there's even another, and there's other Magicites that join us in the world of ruin. And they know what we're ultimately trying to do, which is kill Kefka. And Kefka's now the source of their life force.
They seem down with it?
I would assume that they would know what would happen.
Yes.
And that they've chosen this. So if they've chosen this, that's different.
I suppose so. And then the only question is that this game basically just reinforces that humans cannot live peacefully with, magical beings.
Magic and this world do not mix.
That's the bad guy. Have you seen Legend of Korra, by the way? Season 1?
I have not.
Okay, there's a bad guy in the Legend of Korra season 1, which is the only good season of the whole show, where the guy's basically like, the non-benders, it's not fair because the benders are all magical. We need to take away the magic of all the benders so that they can be normal like everyone else, and then we'll all be equal. It's like just preaching equality. Right. So in this one, it's like the right thing is basically what the bad guy of Legend of Korra was saying, where it's like, no, we can't live peacefully with the magic users. It can only be the non-magic folk.
Ritavu here says, if we're exploring hope, then the idea of reaching towards a magical past is demonstrably doomed. Remove the magical past and there is only forward. Yeah, I like that. All the Espers died, but they were of a prior generation. That world belongs to the past. So maybe we can say
there's something
that
there's something there.
Espers are leaving their attachments behind as well.
There you go, sure, yeah.
And allowing or accepting their deaths, right?
So for the future, sacrificing themselves for the future.
Because they know their existence here isn't it was an invasion by the gods. Their existence is sort of a perversion of what was here on this planet before the gods arrived. Yeah. Maybe they're accepting. I'm not saying that the game should have tried to explain this. I'm just saying I wish I knew.
I just want to know. Yeah, just want to know.
I'm just curious about it.
Because that whole scene with Maduin and Madeline, I love it. It's Madoline, by the way, the Japanese, M-A-D-O. So it's still Mado. It's still, which means to be seduced. Yeah. So her name's Madoline. But that scene where he's like, how will we know unless we try, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they tried and it didn't work. So
it didn't work.
Now we know.
Now we know he can't do it. That's what I'm talking about, though. That scene is a really powerful...
It is.
Piece of abstract storytelling that was building on this idea that, we've been told all along we can't coexist, but how do we know unless we try? Yeah. And they tried. And then the game is saying, no.
The game is saying...
You actually can't.
You can't. I think I know at least in part why, and it is just the story of the Warring Triad, and I think that I can read into this enough to say that it's similar to Final Fantasy X in a lot of ways. It's just an anti-religious message, where it just says we'd be better off without all these gods and spirits and angels and demons and just humans being humans. I think that's what now the writer tries to palette that message and make it, put it into a 10-year-old game that kids can play, 10-year-old meaning game for 10-year-old kids. And then, the message gets all watered down and they can't really say that explicitly, but I think that I can read into it enough to say that's what he's trying to say. If that's what he's trying to say, he didn't say it well. He, she, whoever it is, the whole group of people. Yeah. But I sense something like that, where they're like, the humans are finally free of these extra, what's the word? These supernatural influences on their lives, right? And how great is that? I think it's more intrinsic to human nature, but that would be different to the view of whoever is giving me this message. So,
all right, let's leave it with this. Yeah. Ritavu has our last comment. My impression is that, at least from Rama, Espers knew that the party's mission would doom them. In light of that, becoming Magicite was a more palatable way to take death. weren't espers essentially created by the goddesses to war against each other?
Right.
Yes. The goddesses disappearing would suggest the espers no longer have a purpose in the world that now exists.
But they can make a new purpose. I don't know.
What nihilism, right? Nihilism doesn't mean justify one way or the other. There's no meaning, but you can create your own meaning. Anyway.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for contributing to that conversation. I'm sure it will continue in the comments, and I'm excited to read it.
Yeah.
But that's just the one thing, really. Like the one thing left of this that I'm kind of just like, I'm not sure how I like the taste of that part of this delicious morsel. Of this, it's like, you're like, have you ever had like a dessert or something that's like really good? But there's like,
was that
there's
a
just
raisin?
some note in there somewhere that's just like,
Yes.
wait a minute. Like there's something funky in that. Like
My grandma's cookies, because she would leave her butter in the freezer for too long. And the cookies would be so good, but I'd get this hint of my grandma's freezer that I was like licking her fridge because the butter.
So, anyways, we'll leave it on our Final Fantasy
I love my
VI
grandma.
analysis on that note. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again next week.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Nier Automata.